Way out in the middle of the North Atlantic, kind of tucked between Iceland, Norway, and Scotland, there's this incredible group of islands that honestly feels like a forgotten world. This is the Faroe Islands. And you need to understand, this is a place that was not built for us, for human comfort. This is a place where nature is the absolute, undisputed ruler.
So here's the journey we're about to take. First, we're going to see how this land was literally forged by ancient volcanoes and ice. Then we'll look at how life, both animal and human, figured out how to survive on the absolute edge. After that, we'll visit some of the most iconic, almost magical landmarks in the entire Atlantic. And finally, we'll check in on a unique culture that's standing at a really interesting modern crossroads. You know, this single sentence, it just perfectly captures the fundamental truth of the Faroes. This is the theme for our entire journey today. Every single thing about life here, from the way they build their houses to the words they use, it's all a direct response to the sheer power of the natural world. All right, so to really get a handle on these islands, we have to go way back. I'm talking millions of years ago to see how this dramatic, almost impossibly sharp landscape was actually created in the first place.
You see, the creation of these islands wasn't some single, violent explosion. It was this slow, incredibly powerful four-step process. First, you had millions of years of lava flows just building up the foundation, layer after layer like pages in a book made of stone. Then, as all that rock cooled, it cracked straight down, vertically. Next up, the Ice Age brought these massive glaciers that acted like cosmic sandpaper, just grinding and carving out the valleys you see today. And finally, once all that immense weight melted away, the land itself began to bounce back.
And that brings us to this really fascinating idea, isostatic rebound. Just think of it like a memory foam cushion. You press down on it for a long, long time, and when you let go, it slowly regains its shape. That's what the islands are doing. After being pushed down into the Earth's crust by miles of ice, they're still slowly, even today, bouncing back. And you know, this incredible story isn't just about the rock. It's also about the water. The islands sit right at this amazing crossroads where the warm North Atlantic current smashes into the icy Arctic waters. This constant collision churns up all these nutrients, which fuels a super rich marine ecosystem, and get this, it paints the sea in these stunning, shifting colors, from a steely gray to a bright turquoise, sometimes in the same hour.
Okay, so you've got this incredibly harsh and remote environment. The big question is, how does life manage to survive, let alone thrive here? Well, it all comes down to some really ingenious adaptation.
For the wildlife, those massive cliffs are everything. They're like these bustling vertical cities, just bursting with life. The birds have learned to use these walls as a natural shield from predators. You've got puffins digging burrows high above the waves, fulmars that have mastered the wind currents, and storm petrels that have this almost supernatural ability to navigate the vast open ocean just by using their sense of smell. It's amazing.
And this slide right here, it just brilliantly shows how people develop these really specific, really clever solutions for the unique challenges of island life. Okay, challenge 1. Almost no trees and very little land for farming. Solution, they turned to the sea, where pilot whale hunting historically became a major source of food. Challenge 2, those fierce, unpredictable winds. Solution, they built these turf-roofed houses that provide amazing insulation and stability. And challenge 3, that sudden, disorienting fog. For that, they developed a tool more precise than any map.
And that tool? It's the Faroese language itself. Its incredibly rich vocabulary for different kinds of wind and fog isn't just poetic. No, it's a practical, life-saving instrument. Think about it. When a coastline can totally vanish in a matter of minutes, being able to precisely describe the danger becomes a crucial tool for survival.
Okay, so now let's see what happens when you take all these forces, fire, ice, wind, and water, and you let them collaborate for a few million years. Well, they've sculpted some of the most surreal and iconic landmarks on the entire planet. I mean, really. The islands are home to sites that seem to completely defy logic. A lake that looks like it's floating hundreds of feet above the ocean, a waterfall that flows upwards. It sounds completely impossible. So how on earth does it work?
Well, that famous floating lake is actually a brilliant optical illusion. The trick is your perspective. When you look at it from a high cliff, your line of sight visually squishes that strip of land between the lake and the sea. So it looks like it's floating way, way up there. But in reality, its surface is only about 32 meters above the ocean.
And what about that upside-down waterfall? Okay, this is where physics just gets a little bit wild. During powerful storms, the Atlantic winds are so incredibly strong, they can literally blast into the falling water and push the entire stream sideways and even upwards. It creates this bizarre moment where gravity just seems to lose its power. And just to give you one last sense of the epic scale we're talking about here, check out Cape Enneberg. At 754 meters, it's one of the highest vertical sea cliffs in the entire world. To put that in perspective, that is more than double the height of the Eiffel Tower, rising straight out of the churning Atlantic Ocean.
So let's bring the story to right now, to the present day.
And talk about the people who call this rugged, beautiful landscape home, because they have a really unique history and they're facing some very modern challenges.
The islands are home to only about 50,000 people, and they have this fascinating genetic history that traces back to Scandinavian Viking men and women from the British Isles. The economy? It's almost entirely dependent on fishing. But this has created a pretty unique social challenge. For decades, more women were leaving the islands for education and jobs abroad than men, which led to a pretty serious gender imbalance.
So to solve this problem, some Faroese men turned to a very modern tool, the internet. And this has brought a surprising wave of multiculturalism to one of the most remote places in Europe. The number of women from Southeast Asia, mostly the Philippines and Thailand, has grown tenfold in just the last 2 decades, as they've moved to the islands after meeting their husbands online. And this really brings us to the central tension facing the Faroes today. As this once-forgotten world becomes this popular, must-see travel destination, the people here are facing a really delicate balance. How do you share your home without losing your unique identity? And how do you manage the pressures of all this growing global tourism?
And that leaves us with this final, crucial question. For a culture that was shaped for centuries by isolation and adaptation, their biggest challenge now might be figuring out how to navigate a world that is more connected than ever before. It really makes you wonder what the path forward is for this unique culture, living on the very edge of the world.